Thank you very much indeed, Alan, and thank you, colleagues, for the opportunity to speak. I was really worried about where that joke was going, especially the bit about the elephant, but I'm prepared to be the person pushing the barrow uphill. Well, look, I have got a lot to get through, so if you'll forgive me, I'll gallop a little bit. You're very welcome to have these slides afterwards, and I hope that I'll make it reasonably clear how everything hangs together as we go along. But for those of you who don't know the National Health Service in England, it's the largest organisation in Europe and the third largest in the world after the Chinese Army and the Indian Railways. And I sometimes think that it has unfortunately some of the worst characters of both. It's sort of a little bit anarchic and a bit chaotic and a bit totalitarian, all mixed up together. Within that is an organisation called Connecting for Health, which is an agency that's charged with the deployment of the national program for IT. And those of you who live in England will know that this is something that everybody loves to hate. It's written up very often in the newspapers as a large, late piece of work, like many government IT procurements. It again is the largest civilian IT project in the world, with a capital budget of about £12 billion, about $24 billion, spread over 10 years. And my job is to ensure that the best part of 1 million people are able to use the technologies, first of all to understand them, secondly to welcome them, thirdly to use them, and fourthly to harvest the benefits of this huge technology application in their work. I love the tagline. I don't see it very often these days, but better information for health where and when it's needed. And Nhs Connecting for Health is an agency of the Department of Health tasked with delivering the national program for IT in the NHS, which will provide an integrated IT infrastructure and systems for the NHS in England. Note, it doesn't deal with Scotland, Northern Ireland or Wales, the devolved administrations, so my role isn't UK-wide, but clearly with both citizens and clinicians and other employees moving around freely across those boundaries, we have to take account of what's required in the other jurisdictions. It aims to connect over 30,000 general practitioners to almost 300 hospitals and give patients access to their personal health and care information, transforming the way the NHS works. So it's a pretty aspirational program. I've mentioned already the scale of it, about £12 billion in capital costs, and you can multiply whatever that by some multiple to figure out what the total cost, the impost on the service is in terms of culture, learning, service transformation, and business re-engineering. It's designed to put information and communication technology into every public healthcare facility in England. There's one national service provider, BT, and 3 local service providers, so England's been divided up into geographic blobs, and sooner or later those blobs are going to have to interconnect with one another or join up to the spine. The idea is to have an integrated care record service so that every person in England will have an integrated care record, 50 million separate patient records. One of the other big applications is Choose and Book, which is the ability of individual patients and or their general practitioners to book ahead to see a specialist clinician or hospital. The electronic transmission of prescriptions, which will do away with illegible doctor's handwriting and people ferrying bits of paper from the doctor's surgery to the pharmacy, but that'll all happen behind the scenes. So you'll just simply say where you want to pick something up and it'll be done. Picture archiving, very, very bandwidth-hungry application, all X-rays, clinical photographs and the like, ultrasounds and so on, all stored on huge servers and then dynamically integrated with the patient's records. Remote diagnosis, the ability for people to see your records from a distance and to offer their opinions about what should happen or what's likely to happen. And a couple of other big IT applications that are not being delivered by the national program, a staff record for those 1.4 million people and personal learning portfolios, and a national electronic library for health, and associated with that is sort of point of care clinical knowledge summaries, which would be available to a clinician to bring them up to date with the latest thinking, the latest legislation, contraindications, and to assist with their diagnosis and prognosis. So a lot of IT stuff happening within the healthcare space. The major purposes of Connecting for Health to connect the delivery of the NHS plan with the capabilities of modern IT, and in particular support the patient and the delivery of services designed around the patient, to improve management and delivery of services, And this bit I've italicised because it's the bit that kind of gives me my warrant. Supports staff through effective electronic comms, better learning and knowledge management to cut time to find essential information and make specialised expertise more accessible. So it's something for patients, something for clinicians, something for managers, and something for trainers and learners. Now, within this huge thing, so you've got the Department of Health hovering like a cloud, then you've got the National Health Service, within the National Health Service Connecting for Health, two key propositions. The success of the National Program for IT depends on users learning about what the applications do and how to use them. As somebody wisely said to me recently, all IT applications depend on the quality of learning and training, and in fact, if that's not good enough, not only does the application fail, but so too does the reputation of the deployment. Education, training and development in NHS Connecting for Health is a key player at the national level and the armature around which some other training applications will work, and I'll talk a little bit about what I call the double dividend. So when Alan introduced me as in charge of learning and training for the NHS, it's not strictly true. I'm responsible for one big bit of it. It happens to be a disproportionately large bit, and it also happens to be a bit that's got to do with life and death, because clearly if people retrieve the wrong patient record or make an order of magnitude error in calculations about drugs, or insert the wrong information and the wrong treatment regime into a patient's record, it can have enduring and bad effects. It's really important that people, it's not really a matter of them learning on the job through fiddling and sort of making mistakes, trial and error, which is a proven way in which a lot of people learn office applications, but it really isn't good enough, I guess, in the healthcare space. So what's happening outside the NHS? Because I often have to contextualise this. I mean, we are a big player potentially, but people say, oh yes, well, I mean, this is just something that you've made up or something the Department of Health is on about. In fact, there's a lot going on, and those of you who live in the UK may be familiar with this, the Connecting the UK, the digital strategy, an eminently readable document, and you'll see there that the Department of Health, huge as it is only one part of a much bigger strategy, the e-government strategy, which is designed, for example, the Ministry of Defence, the Department of Works and Pensions, a number of other large-scale applications of the Department for Education and Skills are all moving in the direction of digitally supported, digitally enhanced or digitally delivered services. So although what we're doing is big, it's really part of an even bigger puzzle. The Department for Education's e-strategy, harnessing technology and transforming learning. For those people, many of whom are trained, it's not just the biggest workforce in Europe, it's the biggest employer of graduates, and many of those people are medical or nursing graduates, so they're interested in what's the Higher Education Funding Council doing around learning, and there's a big strategy for the deployment of technology to support learning in formal education. Very interesting recent report from the European Commission, the future of ICT and learning in the Knowledge Society, from an outfit based in Seville, part of the European Commission. And lastly, in April 2006, we published our own blueprint, a roadmap for how we might deploy IT to support learning within the rollout of the National Program for IT. You may be astonished to learn, as I was when I came into post, that this, the largest civilian IT project in the world, was intended to be deployed entirely through face-to-face learning. No one had thought that perhaps the technology could be used to support the deployment of the technology. And so one of the things that I've been gently pushing from behind the scenes is the concept of what I said before, the double dividend, that the national program is being deployed for patient benefit and for clinical benefit and for management benefit, but it will and is dramatically transforming the learning landscape for 1.4 million people. And if it does it for that many people, then it might potentially have a knock-on effect to other parts of the UK or the English workforce as well. So in a sense, what I'm doing is joining up something which has got a momentum that comes from government policy and is being supported by international best practice with another whole discourse which has got to do with empowering learners. We've established something called an Alliance for E-Learning in Health, because although there are many pockets of excellence, I don't know how many of you work in, with or for the health services, but you will know that there are pockets of international excellence dotted around the NHS, but often they're not joined up. Some of it's in the Royal Colleges, some of it's in the universities, some of it's in the big teaching hospitals and so on. So what we've attempted to do is to pull together the main players into a collegiate group, an alliance. We have no money, no budget, no remit, but we've got the intention of drawing together a lot of initiatives and ideas to make sure that they are all joined up and moving in the same direction. Demonstrate the business case for the various components of that roadmap I talked about before, ensure sector-wide commitment, secure funding for the implementation of e-learning, and this is in the face of many people who think that this is a fad, it'll fizzle out, it'll go away, it's not our core business, etc. Implement, monitor and review quality assurance and governance arrangements. Just a little story, that recently we did a review and found 80 separate e-learning packages about how to wash your hands. You know, many of you will have known that there's problems about hospital-acquired infection and about healthcare problems, MRSA and C. difficile in hospitals, and of course an obvious way to get around that is to improve the cleanliness of practitioners. 80 different e-learning packages. Now I'm prepared to admit that washing your hands is more difficult than we thought, but I don't think that it justifies that much duplicate expenditure. Sponsor the development and dissemination of advice and guidance, and undertake periodic reviews of the roadmap and its priorities. And these are just a list of the players. Big crunchy things like the Department of Health, the Strategic Health Authorities, and the Sector Skills Council, and my own organisation Connecting for Health, but you'll see there the devolved administrations, the Academy of Medical Royal Colleges, National E-Learning Operational Group and so on. So there are lots of, if you like, peak bodies that are all doing something in the e-learning space. So what are we doing within Nhs Connecting for Health? Well, our vision is to ensure that every person using or expected to use information and communication technologies in the NHS and related non-NHS workplaces in England is fully trained on the application. So that's an important issue, fully trained. In a timely way. That's even more important because we have to know when the deployments are going to occur if we're going to actually synchronise our training with that, and that there's a transferable up-to-date record of their learning, and that has proven to be quite difficult because individual employers, individual hospitals, individual local health communities are often quite protective about the records of learning of their staff, which militates against them being able to move around the countryside. So something that we've recently achieved and I'm quite proud of is a national learning management system and individual portfolio for every one of those 1.4 million people. 6 guiding principles that undergird what we do. We do nationally only those things that are best done nationally. So that means that sometimes people will say, will you come and work with us on a specific local solution? It might be worthwhile and they might very well need a few extra pairs of hands, but we have to say no, we really have to stick to the knitting and work at things that are best going to deliver value at a national level. Collaborate and seek to work in partnership. This may not be too unusual to many of you who work in corporate or even in other government sectors, but in the health service, regrettably, there are a number of non-interoperable silos, even little fiefdoms, dare I say, with fiefs in charge. And, the concept of working in partnership is actually, if not radical, at least something that's worth putting on the record as a precept. Avoid unnecessary duplication of effort. I've talked about the redundancy and duplication in terms of just a few scattered e-learning assets, but there are differences in access, differences in how up-to-date things are, difference in how well things hang together, in learning user interfaces, and learning resources and opportunities. And we can achieve this by identifying and showcasing good practice. A fourth thing, introduce more extensive and widespread use of e-learning. So what I'm talking to you about today is one part of a bigger puzzle of what we're trying to resolve and solve within Connecting for Health, within the ETD part of it, Education, Training and Development. Supplement formal learning by access to high quality information. I have a personal conviction that knowledge management, electronic performance support and e-learning are all sort of blurring and blending together. The same platforms, the same discourses, the same technologies, the same mindsets undergird all of them. And so what I'm trying to talk about is a learning network rather than a training one. And lastly, create and sustain a national network of well-trained and adequately resourced practitioners. Regrettably, often the people who are responsible for delivering training are relatively lowly and junior. Their services are thought to be dispensable. Training budgets are often the first ones to cut when things get tough. And these people often feel isolated and they feel undervalued. And so one of the things I'm trying to do is to bring about a sense of community amongst those people working in different health services. So the case for e-learning, and this will probably be well known to all of you, I think we can only achieve our goals if we use e-learning as part of an overall blend. It ensures that information is always current, so whatever is downloaded and used is the most recent and the best information. It ensures equality of access irrespective of where people are, creates a culture of learning, reduces the cost per user. Certainly for the delivery of information, I don't mean to detract from the importance of face-to-face learning or the importance of supporting people, which I think is often ignored. Reduces travel and time release costs. If you imagine letting 1.4 million people out of the workplace for even half a day and backfilling their costs, it would be dramatic. So we're trying to enhance the transfer of training by teaching people in the workplace with the technology they'll be using. Provides resources that can be reused and shared. Empowers people to identify their own learning, so that seems to me to be a big plus, and allows managers and others to get a bit of an overview, so some kind of reporting system about who's done what, where people are up to, how many people have been trained and how recently, and potentially it realises additional benefits from this huge investment in the national program. Now, if you think about any learning intervention, it seems to me that there are 4 levers that you can pull. One of them has to do with content and the standards of that content. One of them has to do with the delivery mechanisms and platforms. One has to do with the readiness of the users and the learners, and one has to do with the readiness of the trainers and the people who are facilitating and supporting that learning. So those are the 4 elements of our strategy, and we divide it into some strategic enablers, which are big, high-level, long-term kinds of things which will have an enduring impact, and some tactical solutions, which are short-term, more immediate, resolving or ameliorating immediate problems. So let me just quickly step through these things. In terms of strategic enablers, and starting in the top left-hand corner, what have we done? Well, we've published and disseminated widely a set of standards about education, training and development. They're not mandatory, they're recommended, but this is the first time that there's ever been even a suggested national set of what training standards should look like, and we've negotiated for a single content repository so that instead of people procuring and developing 80 different packages on hand washing, they could have gone to one place and said, oh, I see one already exists or 2 already exist, we don't need that, we just need to repurpose what's already around. In terms of delivery mechanisms, we are in the process of procuring a like live training environment because we don't want people learning using live patient data. So this have to contain realistic but not real patient data and patient journeys, the National Integrated Spine Training System. A training resource centre, which is not a physical thing but a virtual entity to kind of carry forward the notion of learning into the future, and the National Learning Management System, which I just mentioned before. We have an essential IT skills project. Until March of this year, we've been running the largest European computer driving licence program in the world, 220,000 users. However, we've found that that's really not fit for purpose. It's training people in office applications and not necessarily in clinical applications. So we've rebranded it Essential IT Skills. And we are developing for trainers and for educators, managers and practitioners an online readiness toolkit and something called eSpace, which is a collaborative toolkit, a place where people can express perplexities, share insights, drop documents, work collaboratively on solving problems. In terms of tactical solutions, more short-term, immediate kinds of things, in contents and standards, we have developed and promulgated a suite of e-learning resources. What we found was that the big suppliers were providing technical training, but nothing that explained the big picture and how these things cohere. So we've tried to explain how does the national program work, why is it important, what's the importance of protecting patient confidentiality and so forth. We've procured a contract for mobile training units because quite a few health communities do not have large dedicated training facilities with enough networked high-end computers to deal with this massive bulge of learning. So they can simply pick up a telephone and order a mobile unit to be delivered to their place for 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 months or a year, however long as required, and that the machines in that pod or cabin are imaged to look and feel exactly like the ones that people are used to using. A great big cable is plugged into the organisation and it then becomes an extension of their IT environment. We've got an elite toolkit. Elite stands for e-learning IT essentials, and there's a cute little CD that people can work through to sort of figure out what their level of competence is and which skills they need to remediate in order to use the national applications. And we've got several other things that we are doing to support trainers as well. So in short, we in ETD National are part of that national alliance I referred to, contributing to a big national strategy. We're currently appointing a national lead on e-learning, somebody to provide a front for a lot of this work. We've got a number of e-learning projects ourselves underway, and we're undertaking an integrated program of e-learning activities for trainers, for learners, for managers, and more broadly across the service. Now, just to finish off by putting this into context, I think what my job is about creating cultural change and comfort with new technology. When I came into the role, it was presented very much as really a practical response to the deployment of new functionality in the workplace. And people only need to be able to press a button, pull down a patient record, stick some information in and put it away again. And I don't actually think that's what it is. I think certainly people do need technical proficiency with specific applications, and that's essential. That's a necessary but not sufficient condition. I'd like to see people able to use technologies for all kinds of learning, for personal and professional development, to be able to access learning resources as and when required seamlessly, to drop in and out of applications and to engage in learning so that to create that culture that I talked about before. But perhaps most importantly and most aspirationally, the ability to use technologies for other knowledge applications, including sharing insights, because I'm quite keen that people see themselves as co-creators of knowledge. As we are going into uncharted territory, both the scale and the range of things that we're doing, the interaction between different technologies, no one's ever quite been there before, and I want people to speak up and say, this works, this didn't, we tried this, we're experimenting here, we found a benefit we didn't expect there. So in fact, to empower people across the service to feel that they are part of a shared journey and not just recipients of something that an expert's told them. So e-learning in the NHS, personally I'm very excited about our direction of travel, and proud to be part of what I think of as quite a major transformation, not just for the 1.4 million people, but for the 60 million people who rely on the National Health Service in England.